If you're a founder or a salesperson taking multiple sales calls a day and you're completely and utterly exhausted, struggling to keep your energy up, and feeling like you're putting on a fake persona just to get through every single call, this video is going to save you from complete and utter burnout. I'm going to show you why you're draining yourself and the tactical things you can do right now to manage your energy, and why, if you don't do this soon, it's going to destroy both your close rate, your health, and your business. Trust me, I've been there. And again, I'm creating these videos to show you exactly the lessons I have learned. But first off, let's talk about why sales calls are so exhausting in the first place, because most founders don't realize what's actually happening to them. Now, in order for me to do that, let's hop right into the notes that I prepared for this call. So the first thing we have to talk about is the energy performance requirement, right? Because every sales call requires you to show up with high energy, enthusiasm, and positivity for the most part. And remember, you're not just having a conversation, you're actually performing, right? You're just managing your tone, your energy, your enthusiasm, all while actively listening and strategizing on how to handle objections that ultimately is going to come your way. Now, that level of performance is mentally and emotionally exhausting, especially when you're doing it multiple times a day and taking up to 8-9 calls a day, right? Now, another thing that we want to look at here is the emotional labor of being on all the time. And here's what kills most founders. They think they need to put on a persona during sales calls, right? They try to be this hyper energetic, always positive, never tired version of themselves that isn't actually real and who they really are. And again, when you're being somebody that you're actually not, that's where the burnout happens fast. You're not just managing the conversation, you're managing a fake version of yourself, and that in itself is exhausting. Now, let's talk about the context switching problem, because as a founder, you're not just taking sales calls, right? You're jumping from team meetings to sales calls to customer support to product decisions and much more, right? And then again, you're on another sales call. And each switch basically requires your mental energy to change context, right? It's because you're dealing with different things. And by the time you get to your third or fourth sales call of the day, you know this just as good as I am, you are already mentally drained from everything else you've been doing, right? Now, when you're carrying, and let's move on to the founder's burden here. So when you're carrying the weight of the entire business just to close deals, you're thinking about other things such as payroll, team expenses, team issues, product problems, cash flow, and so on and so forth. And then you're trying to show up on a sales call acting like everything is perfect and you're just excited to help this prospect, right? That specific disconnect between how you feel and how you need to show up for a call creates a massive internal stress and exhaustion in itself, right? Now, let's look at some, tactical energy management, let me just actually get this correct here on the screen for you as well. But the next section we want to look at here is the tactical energy management strategies, right? Because again, you're probably sitting there agreeing with me, but you're probably thinking, okay, well, how can I change this? Well, let me give you some practical things that you can do right now to manage your energy better during sales calls. The first one I can suggest, and this is what I tell all my closers as well, is just get fresh air, right? And again, this is the most simple answer, right? But most people don't do it. Think about it, or just actually act on it. Between every single sales call, just step outside, even if it's just for 2 to 3 minutes at a time, right? Breathe real air. Look at something other than just the screen that you're staring at all day, and reset your nervous system in general. You'll find out that, the fresh air and physical movement will help to reset your energy and clear your head for the next call. At least that has helped for me tremendously over the years. Now, let's look at the physical reset strategies, because when you're feeling tired or low on energy before a call, you can do something physical to spike your energy. For me personally, what has worked? 10 to 20 push-ups to get your blood flowing, or just jump around for 30 seconds to activate your blood, or splash some cold water on your face to shock your system awake. I know this is not, groundbreaking things, but this is some stuff that is tried and tested over the years, and that specifically has worked. It might sound silly, and it especially sounds silly me creating this YouTube video. However, these are things that actually work, right? And again, this is going to work better than a lot of other more complicated strategies, and this is going to mentally force you to have that energy, okay? The next thing that is no surprise is just using caffeine strategically, right? Because caffeine works, but you need to use it strategically, right? Don't just drink coffee all day long and then crash at 2 p.m., right? Time your caffeine intake for when you have your most important calls, right? Because again, if you have a call at say 5 p.m. and you need to be sharp, right? And different people use caffeine in different ways, right? Some people drink caffeine all day long and don't crash. That's perfectly fine. All I'm saying is that know your specific body, right? And then adjust your caffeine intake. If you have a call at 5 p.m. and you drink 2 coffees a day, like I actually drink 4 espressos a day, I'll drink 2 in the morning specifically and 2 at 3 p.m. so I'm ready for the back half of my day. And another kind of tip here is that I don't use this specifically, but a lot of people use nicotine pouches such as Zyn for quick energy boost before the calls. Now again, I'm not recommending this, but I'm just being honest about what people actually do. Now let's look at the authenticity energy saver, right? Because here's probably the biggest one. Just stop trying to be somebody that you're not on sales calls, right? If you're naturally more laid back, kind of chill person, don't try to be hyper energetic, right? If you're naturally intense, don't try to be overly friendly, right? Be genuine. And if you're genuine, right, that's going to take less energy away from trying to be somebody that you're not, right? You can still be professional and enthusiastic while being yourself. Trust me, I promise you it can work, right? Because when you're being authentic, you're not expending extra energy trying to maintain a character that you're not, right? You're just having a real conversation about how you can help someone specifically. Okay, now let's talk about schedule optimization, right? Because this is also a big one. Because here's the thing, and let me just say it out front. Stop booking sales calls back to back to back to back, okay? Build in about 15 to 30 minute buffers between your calls for recovery, notes, and just a mental reset. For example, when we take sales calls, all of our sales calls have a 15-minute buffer after the meeting ends, right? And that's to take notes, just to mentally reset. And every sales call is different, right? You have to prepare for every single sales call and do your homework, right? Because I'll see founders book 6 calls in a row back to back to back with no breaks in between, and then they wonder why they're basically dying by call number 4. Remember, your calendar is within your control, so fix it. Right? Now, again, this is my recommendation. Every person is different, but schedule your most important prospects for morning calls when your energy is naturally the highest, right? Don't take high value calls at 4 p.m. when you're already exhausted. And, I've been doing this for years, but I actually heard, Jeff Bezos specifically does this as well, where he has all of his most important meetings in the morning and then he has no meetings in the afternoon. But again, this can be different for every single person, right? Alex Hormozi does it the opposite. He schedules his day from backwards forward, right? So he takes his most important calls at, the first call he'll take is at 4:30 p.m. or 4 p.m., right? And then 3 p.m. and then 2 p.m. and so on and so forth. Because he specifically likes working in the morning without any distractions. It all comes down to what you specifically prefer, right? If you are okay taking calls later during the day, then take calls later during the day. However, if you feel like your energy dies down later during the day, right? Well, then just take your calls or your most important calls earlier in the morning. Now, let's look at the deeper problem here, which is, working in your business and on your business, right? And this is something we seriously need to talk about, because if you're a founder and you're taking all the sales calls yourself, you have a bigger problem than energy management. And this is what I like to call the CEO trap, right? And you know this as the founder, your job is to work on the business and not in the business, right? And when you're spending 3 to 4 hours per day on sales calls, you're not doing CEO work. You're doing the sales reps work, right? And that means that nobody is focusing on things such as, strategic planning and business development, team building and management, product development and innovation, marketing and positioning strategy, and building systems and processes for your business. Because while you're on those sales calls, your business is not growing. It's just maintaining, right? And eventually that's going to catch up to you. Now, let's move on to the next one, which is, the burnout trajectory. Sorry, that one's a hard one to pronounce. But here's what happens to founders who don't fix this in the first place. And trust me, I almost got caught in this a couple years ago. The first thing is they're so excited to take these sales calls because they're actually closing deals, right? And then it becomes routine, and then ultimately it becomes exhausting, right? Then they start showing up to calls tired and being somebody that they're not. And then what ultimately happens is that their close rate drops, and then they need even more calls just to hit their revenue numbers, right? And then they burn out completely. It's this endless trap, and I've seen this trajectory destroy businesses that otherwise would have just succeeded, right? Now, again, here's the next thing that I want to lead into is that you cannot scale yourself. And the biggest limitation to your business's growth is actually you, believe it or not. Because as long as you're the only person who can close deals, your revenue is capped by how many sales calls you can physically take, right? And as we've already talked about and established, taking sales calls all day long while running a company is literally unsustainable, right? Something has to give. And this leads me to my next point, which is the actual quality problem. Because once you are burnt out, your close rates will drop because you're not bringing the energy, the enthusiasm, the strategic thinking that you need to close deals, right? You're just trying to survive every single call, right? So not only are you exhausted, but you're also making less money per call. It's literally a downward spiral, which leads me into my next problem, or the next thing I want to talk about, which is the opportunity cost. Because every hour spent on taking sales calls is an hour spent or not spent, right, on activities that could 10x your business, right? You could be building partnerships, improving your offer, creating better marketing, materials, or building better systems. But instead, you're basically stuck on this endless loop of taking sales calls day after day, week after week, slowly and utterly burning out, right? Now, let's talk about the actual solution to all of this, because we've talked about all the problems, but you're probably sitting there and asking yourself, well, Craig, what is the actual solution to all of this, right? Because that's all good and well, but hey, how do I solve this, right? And the real solution to sales call burnout isn't a better management tactic, right? It's getting yourself out of the sales call seat and building a team that can actually handle the sales calls for you, right? And I know what you're thinking. Nobody can close like I can, or I need to be involved in every single sale. But that belief is going to keep you trapped and burnt out forever. Now, here is the reality check. Yes, you might be the best closer in your business right now, but you can also find and train people who can close at 70 to 80% of your specific effectiveness. And if they can take 80% of your calls, that frees you up to do CEO work that can actually scale the business, right? And the math is pretty simple. Would you rather personally close 100% of 30 deals per month, or have a team close 80% of 100 deals per month while you focus on doubling your lead flow, right? Now, I know what I would choose. I would just build a team, right? Because that's how you can actually scale your business. Now, let's lead into the right approach, because look, you don't need to hire salespeople tomorrow, right? Start with one really good closer who can handle your overflow, and then after that, basically add an appointment setter who can qualify leads and book calls to protect not only your calendar space, but your new closer's calendar space as well. And what you're gonna see is that this immediately removes the lowest value activities from your plate, such as lead qualification, appointment setting, and ultimately you're going to reduce your call volume. Now, ultimately, let's talk about the fear factor here, because most founders are absolutely scared to hire salespeople because they're hired bad ones before, or they're worried about losing control. But staying in sales full-time isn't maintaining control. It's actually preventing growth, right? And the right salesperson doesn't just take sales calls off your plate. They bring insights into your market, they help improve your offer, and they become strategic partners in your business's growth. Now, this is exactly why we built Sales Match, to focus on placing really good closers and appointment setters who can perform at the highest level that you need. And again, we don't place people who need constant hand holding or will close at 30% when you close at 50%, right? We place proven performers who have been in high ticket sales and maintain the quality standards you have set. And our appointment setters can take the qualification and scheduling burden off of your plate, so you're the only talking to people who are genuinely qualified and ready to buy. Now, again, if you're looking for us to take that off of your plate and go find really good closers or appointment setters where we will pass them through our 8-step vetting process, such as calling ex-employers, calling ex-colleagues, doing call reviews, testing the objection and mock handling, we can do all of that for you. And again, if we place them and they don't work out within 60 days, we will replace them, no questions asked. So if you are looking at that and you are interested in that, there will be some links down below. But other than that, I really hope this video helped you, and we'll chat soon. Bye-bye.